All right. I'm Peter Alessandria, and for the next 90 minutes, I invite you to be bigger than you think you are. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Let's take a look at our agenda for this evening. So, as usual, we're going to start with some announcements. We have a recommended reading tonight. It's a good one. Our affirmation of the day. We'll do some introductions and victories. That's an opportunity for people to share a victory from the past week, or if you're new, you'll have an opportunity to introduce yourself. We will be listening to another audiobook excerpt from Chapter 4 in my book. We'll have our topic discussion, take a break at about 8:45, and then we'll come back and talk about the assignment for tonight, do some Q&A, and then we'll wrap it up by 9:30. As usual, a reminder, today's workshop is being recorded and will be available on the BeBiggerToday.com website and YouTube channel within the next 48 hours. Please feel free to stop your video and mute your microphone if you do not wish to be seen or heard on the recording. All right, first announcement, Be Bigger Than You Think You Are, author-signed paperback. Book 20 is the discount code to save 20%. Now, this actually is a limited time offer. It's through the end of the year, guys, so you have about a week. After that, we're moving on to the second edition, and the first edition will no longer be available. So if you're interested, bebiggertoday.com/book and use book 20 at checkout to receive your 20% discount. New York Cityscapes. This is the ultimate NYC photo book. It's a collaboration between myself and 6 other NYC area Instagram photographers. And we have amazing, awesome, one-of-a-kind photos of New York City in this book. So each photographer gets their own chapter. So right now you see my photos, but there's 6 other photographers in there that have, these guys are even better than I am. I mean, the photos are really amazing in this book. So if you would like a copy of this, I do have a few more copies left. This is only $16.95. It's on sale at bebiggertoday.com/bookstore. I'll sign this as well. All right, guys, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We are almost ready to have the audiobook available. So I'm wrapping it up this week. And it is available for a limited time only now for $9.99 on pre-order. It is going to be close to 10 hours. It's unabridged, and it comes with a complete money-back guarantee if you do not love it. You just let me know, and I'll send you your money back. Same with the paperback, by the way. But I know you're going to love it. BeBiggerToday.com/bookstore. Get it there. Hats and T-shirts. Use the discount code MERCH20 at checkout. These are actually really nice T-shirts and hats, actually. I wear my hat all the time, although not on this workshop. Maybe next time. So anyway, MERCH20 at checkout. Get 20% off. And then my original art and photography. So guys, this stuff is really, it's professionally framed. This is the best of my photos. And I have 4 different sizes, and they're beautifully framed, and it's a gallery wrap canvas print. It will look great in any office, any home. You can probably even put it out on the street, and it will look great. So if you're interested, you can find out more on my website after I play this little commercial. Peter's photos and abstract designs are uniquely beautiful, one-of-a-kind works of art. These gallery wrap canvas prints are set in a contemporary shadow box floating frame and will enhance the beauty of any home or office. Available in 4 different sizes, each piece is professionally framed and comes complete and ready to hang. Frames are available in your choice of black, white, or brown, and each is signed by the artist. Peter's original art and photography will make a great gift for a client, for yourself, or someone you love. Order yours today. All right, and in case you're wondering, that abstract that you see in the little video is actually from the cover of the book. So that abstract, you can see it on that too. That's an abstract that I actually created from one of my original It was a landscape image. I don't actually remember right off the top of my head which image it was, but all my abstracts are actually my landscape or cityscape photos that I bring into Photoshop, and I create these abstracts from them. So they're actually, I've licensed some of them for commercial use. There's a big wall covering company that licensed a bunch of them, and they're putting them on walls in hotels and restaurants and stuff like that. So I'm really proud of these, and so you can get them as fine art, or you can just look at them on my website. All right, and of course, refrigerator magnets. These are the forgiveness refrigerator magnets. You can get these at bebiggertoday.com/merch. These are also all my original photos. And as I said, there's a story behind these. That's the story that I wrote, the article that I wrote for Morning Laziness, where I talk about how this license deal for souvenirs in New York City came about. All right, you go to my website, bebiggertoday.com. On the homepage, you'll find a link to this article. And finally, one-on-one coaching and/or corporate consulting. If you have a business or you work for a company, you want me to speak to your management team, your sales team, your executive team, human resources, on how they can be bigger than they think they are. Or if you're an artist, a photographer, just a creative person, or actually not even a creative person, just somebody who wants to be bigger than they think they are, reach out to me through the website, and we'll set that up. All right, so let's kick it off tonight with our recommended reading. So I've mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza's work a few times over the last few months. Phenomenal guy. I did actually one of his week-long workshops in September 2019 at Niagara Falls in New York, and boy, it was intense. I mean, we were meditating like 6-8 hours a day. We were up at 4 a.m. to do these meditations. And he's a really cool guy. He's actually from New Jersey originally. And he has a whole story of his own. He was featured in that movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? I don't know if he was in The Secret or not. But he's been around for a while. And his personal story is that he was a chiropractor in Southern California, and he actually got run over by an SUV during a triathlon, during the biking part of the triathlon, and it broke his back. And the doctors wanted to do surgery on him and put a steel rod in there, saying that would be the only chance he had to ever walk again. And if he didn't have the surgery, chances were pretty good that he was going to end up paralyzed for the rest of his life. But he decided not to have the surgery, and he went home, and for the next 12 weeks, he used the power of his mind. I know it sounds a little out there, but apparently it's true. He used the power of his mind to reconstruct his back, to heal himself. And actually, he was relying on that inner essence, that inner energy, that divine energy, that loving energy that surrounds us and is within us. He says he tapped into that, and that's what allowed him to heal himself. Or it's actually that energy that healed him. And, he runs around today. He's an athlete. He's, you would never know that he was run over, and his prognosis was that he would be paralyzed for the rest of his life. Anyway, so that's his story. You can find out more about him online anywhere you want to go, drjoedispenza.com. This book in particular, You Are the Placebo, Making Your Mind Matter, picks up on that whole theme of the power of the mind, and specifically the power of the mind in relation to the body. And so this is a great book. There's a lot of scientific research in there, but he also gives a lot of his own experiences. He gives anecdotal stories from his students and whatnot. The bottom line is, I believe, and I know more and more people are coming into this belief as well, the mind is a lot more powerful than we know. And actually, he comes to the conclusion, or at least I come to the conclusion after listening to his work, that it's all placebo effect. Everything is placebo. If we take a medication and it works, it's because we believe in it. It's the power of belief. It's the power of the mind to bring about an intention, a firmly held belief, and manifest that in reality. Now, I've been talking about that from the beginning in terms of how we create our lives and the power of our thinking and all of that. This takes it to the next level. So, highly recommend this book, You Are the Placebo, Making Your Mind Matter. You can get it as an Audible audiobook. You can get it paperback, Amazon, every place else. And check out his website. He has a bunch of cool stuff on his website too. There's meditations, there's all kinds of stuff there to check out. All right, affirmation of the day. I have enough, there is enough, I am enough. Now, as I was putting this affirmation together for today, I was just thinking about this and you know, scarcity. When we're run by our ego, we're going to talk a lot about the ego as we go forward. And when we're run by the ego, one of the prime directives, I think they use that in Star Trek, the prime directive of the ego is scarcity, and which means there's not enough. And of whatever it is we think we need to either survive or be happy. And then the next prime directive of the ego is, even if there is enough out there, there's not enough in here. And that's where we get this idea about ourselves as unworthy, not good enough, don't have what it takes, nobody's going to like us, unlovable. Those are all symptomatic of this belief that many of us have, that I have, that I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. And the end of that sentence is, I'm not good enough to be loved the way I am. So I'm not enough is I'm not good enough. I'm not enough to be loved the way I am. So I love this affirmation. You know, this is, again, we're reprogramming. And, consciously and deliberately entertaining the notion that I am good enough, that I do have what it takes, that I am lovable, that I am worth being loved the way I am, you know, that's a very empowering thought. Those are empowering thoughts. And I notice for me, maybe you guys notice this, maybe you don't, but you know, my thinking influences my emotional state, and my emotional state influences my physical state. So when I'm thinking negative thoughts, I'm feeling negative feelings, and my body, my energy, my physicality feels negative. Whereas when I start to reprogram that and bring in some positive intentions, some positive affirmations, the opposite is true. Now, the other thing I want to say briefly here is I realized as I was working on this today that I never once in the book, I talk a little bit about selfishness, and that's in relation to the ego. And I'll just say right now, so the ego, this part of our mind that sees itself as separate, as different, and as vulnerable, as threatened. It's the part of our mind that developed as a way to, it was actually geared for the survival of the species. You know, when we were those little mammals living in the trees in the jungle, it was really important to be aware of our environment, to be skeptical, to be hypervigilant, to be selfish. You know, when our survival is at stake, it's probably a good idea to be selfish to make sure that we survive. The problem is that part of our mind is still alive and well, and it's no longer serving us, because all you have to do is look around the world right now and see what's going on in the world. And the survival mentality, the selfishness, and the reason I'm bringing this up now is because in this affirmation where it says there is enough, I have enough, there is enough, it occurred to me that not once in the book do I mention the word greed, as in greedy people. And I realized today that, you know, greed is, this is take what you like and leave the rest, but my take on it is greed is a form of fear. And the fear is that I'm not going to have enough. The fear is there's not going to be enough out there for me, for my family, for my whatever, you know. And so so I prefer to think of it not as people being greedy, but as people being afraid. And we're going to talk, I've mentioned this in the past, when I come to the equation, when I come to the situation or the relationship, and I recognize that I'm afraid, now all of a sudden I can turn back and look at myself. I can turn back, do what we've been talking about in this book, and say, the problem is never the situation. The problem is always how I see myself in that situation. And how can I change how I see myself so I'm no longer afraid? Now, if I'm no longer afraid, then chances are pretty good I'll be less greedy. I'll be less selfish. I'll be more willing to share. I'll be more willing to help out my fellow man. So when we alleviate fear, everything changes. Now, here's the thing. Some people say, well, people are just greedy. And I don't know if that's true or not. Right now, at least, I prefer to look at it as people are afraid, and one way that the fear manifests is greed. Now, here's the thing. I am guessing, I'll talk about myself, the times in my life when I've been selfish, when I've been greedy, I was not aware that I was afraid. See, we talked about this in the past. We have these self-images, we have these beliefs, we have these thoughts about ourselves, and when it's negative, it gets buried in our subconscious, so we're not aware of it, yet that's what's running our lives. So I'm not aware that I'm afraid, but I'm acting in a selfish manner, I'm acting in a greedy manner, without even realizing what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. And I feel justified, because you know what? There isn't enough. And the world is not a safe place. And I can't trust, and I can't relax, and I can't feel serenity because of look what's going on around me. So we get locked into this thought process that says there's not enough, I'm not going to be okay. We suppress the fear because that's a defense mechanism. It's too taxing on our body, taxing on our psyche. But then it manifests at the next level in selfishness, in greed, cheating, pushing ahead of somebody else on the line, whatever it is, and we feel justified. So we want to begin to be aware of that. We want to begin to work backwards. We want to be conscious in the moment of what we're presenting to the world, how we're interacting with other people, and say, what must be behind that? What's the thought behind the thought? What's the feeling behind the feeling? And begin to investigate that. Because there are people who spend their life acting in a selfish, greedy way, and they think that they're perfectly justified in doing that, and they never question what's running that, or if that's even a problem. All of that for the affirmation of the day. All right, so I always felt like sharing all that. Hopefully that was helpful. And it's my take. Take what you like and leave the rest. All right, introductions and victories. So is there anybody who wants to share a victory from the past week, or is there anybody who's new who would like to say hello and introduce themselves? You just unmute yourself and we'll take it away.
I'd like to share a victory.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
There are a lot of boxes here, a lot of boxes. However, there used to be a whole house full of boxes, and now there's only a room full of boxes. So my victory is many boxes unpacked in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And my husband and I saw the convergence and took a photo of it. It's beautiful, just a tiny little dot. But when you enlarge the dot, you can see what I make out to be two planets, Saturn and Jupiter. So that was very exciting yesterday, the day before. So thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Great. Glad you're here. And I'm glad you made it. And that's pretty good to have one room left with boxes in just a few short days. That's pretty impressive. I moved 11 years ago and I still got boxes. All right, great. Who else?
I'll share.
Dee Dee.
Hey, Peter. Hey, everybody. Happy holidays. Sorry about the dim lighting. I'm just going to go out in the freezing weather. I, could so relate to the session last week. And in response to that, I'm building a team, a support team. And so I have a mastermind called Get Shit Done. Sorry about the swearing. Get Stuff Done team. Because I am delinquent in some IRS stuff, and I really need to get past that event, and I really need a lot of support because of the depth of the paperwork required to accomplish that. Anyway, so that's me stepping out of fear towards self, and maybe some of this what you just talked about, fear of greed, that kind of thing. I look forward to having resolution, and I'll be sure and report it. Thanks, Peter. Pass.
All right, great. Thank you, Dee Dee. So yeah, I love that. I love hearing that. This is a mastermind group. For anybody who doesn't know, is a group of like-minded individuals that meet on a regular basis to support each other. It actually has its origins. I think it was the original concept was born with Napoleon Hill and his book, Think and Grow Rich, which I think was in the 30s, 20s or 30s. And what he did was he was a journalist, or maybe he wasn't even a journalist, maybe he was some kind of a student. But he went to Andrew Carnegie and convinced Andrew Carnegie to let him interview him about success. And Carnegie liked him so much that he financed his research on success and got him introductions to people like Henry Ford, all the big successful industrialists of the day. And he went around the country interviewing them and finding out the secret of their success. And then he created this whole, I don't know what the word is, I don't know what the right word. He came up with this success theory, how we can achieve success. And actually in his book, he talks a lot about the power of the mind, the power of visualization, to create success, to create what we want to have in life. Anyway, Dee Dee, thank you so much for chiming in. I love that you're asking for help and you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people. That's what successful people do. Successful people ask for help. Successful people surround themselves with like-minded people. And then they take action. Because it's not enough, I've said this before, the whole purpose of the affirmations, of the vision statement, of all that stuff that we do, we're not going to sit around and meditate and then magically stuff is going to appear in our lives. I mean, actually, sometimes it does happen that way, but most of us are not far enough along in our practice to actually be manifesting stuff like that. But what the affirmations do, what the vision statement does, is it motivates us to take action, to take positive action. Because the way we create in this world, in the physical plane, is by taking action. So get the help you need, surround yourself with a team, and then take action and get stuff done. Love it. Thanks, Dee Dee. All right, who else wants to say hi?
Oh, this is Laura. I'm going to keep my video on. Hi, Peter. And I want to say hi. And last week was really very helpful. I've got it. I believe that was the topic or the motto for that last week. I've got it. I've got this. I've got that. I've got it. And I had a very not tiresome as much as a stressful Thursday after the seminar. And I felt this is all too much. That's where I go. I start with, this is too much. Maybe I should cut back more on my hours at what I do for a living. And oh, and my gosh, and this, and the car. And I said, wait a minute, I've got it. I've got this. I've got this. And it really helped. It really helped. It's not my nature to go there. So I'm impressed. I'm impressed, and I thank you. And I'm working hard on this stuff. I mean, it's contra to everything I am in many ways. And but boy, that really, really was significant. And I even kept on with it after Thursday, over a few other thin stretches of stress. And thank you. Okay, I'll mute. Wanted to
All right, great.
share my victory.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you so much, Laura. I love that. I love hearing that. And it really is that simple. It's like all we're doing is changing our idea about ourselves in the moment with a little phrase like, I got this, I can do this, I can handle this. As opposed to the disempowering thoughts that we feed ourselves all day, which is, this is too much, I can't handle this is going to suck. That literally takes the wind out of our sails. And you know what? It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I love that. I love hearing that. Thank you so much, Laura, for sharing that. And I get that it's a stretch. Honestly, it's still a stretch for me. And I don't, sometimes I forget and I go into that, how am I going to handle this? This is a nightmare, and then I remember. And the good news is I remember sooner. And, things don't magically change in the moment always, but sometimes they do. But in the long term, it gets easier to deal with my life. I still have challenges, I still have problems, my life is far from perfect. But the only thing that's changed is now I see myself as somebody who can handle more than I thought I could. On my website, on the homepage, I say, it's my belief that most of us are a lot more lovable and capable than we know. And, seeing myself as capable was not something, it's not always a way that I saw myself. And not seeing myself as being able to handle life created all kinds of problems for me. And so it's that shift in perception. If you read A Course in Miracles actually says a miracle is a shift in perception. It's the same situation, it's the same people, everything's the same, but I see it differently. And when I see things differently, everything changes. And that's where the miracles happen. Great, Laura, thank you. Anybody else want to say hi or share victory? So we're continuing on with our topic from Chapter 4. I think we're going to have one more week on Chapter 4 next week, and then we'll move on to Chapter 5. From FEAR to LOVE, we're going to listen to an excerpt from my audiobook, again, Chapter 4, but I'm not going to give you the page numbers because it's from the second edition, which reads differently than the first edition, especially in Chapters 4 and 5. So we're going to listen to the excerpt now, and then when we come back, we'll chat some more. Celebrity worship. Related to this is the love affair and obsession many of us have with celebrities. We want to be just like our favorite movie star, reality TV personality, or sports hero. Because we often judge celebrities to be more valuable and important than we are, we think emulating them will make us more important too. This is why celebrity endorsements are so highly sought after by advertisers. People think owning the same products as their favorite celebrities will somehow make them more valuable and worthy too. It's for similar reasons many people are obsessed with certain brands, clothing, cars, hotels, electronics, etc. They think owning that particular brand makes them more valuable as a person. Whether we engage in celebrity worship or inequality in our relationships with people we actually know, this is a reflection of our belief in our own inherent lack of worth and value. This is also another good example of why it's so important to uncover our negative core beliefs about ourselves. If I see myself as inherently valueless, I will unconsciously seek ways, including leeching off other people's celebrity status, to feel more valuable. It's these mostly unconscious negative core beliefs that run us. Sure, it's fun to have public figures we look up to and who inspire us to succeed in life. And what would Halloween be without dressing up as our favorite politician or superhero? But worth by association thinking, whether in our personal relationships or with respect to the celebrities we idolize, does not serve us. So knock it off. By the way, George Clooney drives an Audi, and so do I. With respect to relationships with people we actually know, that poster of Kim Kardashian in your man cave does not count. Many of us can be obsessed with what we think other people think of us. Yet since we're always reacting to our own opinions of ourselves, worrying about what other people think of us is never time well spent. Thus, it's helpful to keep the following saying in mind. put it on a sticky note on your refrigerator. What other people think of me is none of my business. Of course, for this to work, we have to be willing to take responsibility for our own thoughts and feelings. Living in fear of what someone else thinks of us says we don't know that we have the power to decide how we feel about ourselves. As I mentioned in the example of the people with no body hair falling in love, if I experience negative emotions at any time during a relationship, it's because I am judging myself as unlovable. Any anger or despair is caused by my own negative self-image, not by what the other person thinks of me. Accordingly, here's another really important sticky note for the refrigerator. Outside, not inside. No one has the power to hurt me unless I give them that power. Now, I'm not sure everyone is on board with this. As we discussed in the last chapter, we often have an investment in seeing ourselves as victims, especially in our personal relationships. Thus, someone might say, what about being married for 15 years only to find out your spouse has been cheating on you with your best friend? Is that not supposed to hurt? My reply would start with that I'm sorry you had that experience. No one deserves to be treated that way. Second, I would say I understand how that could be shocking and trigger feelings of loss, sadness, and grief. But then I would also add that if after the initial shock wears off, you still feel hurt or betrayed, there's something else going on. It probably means you're interpreting their behavior in a way that says you're worthless, unimportant, or unlovable. But since the other person can't make you feel anything, it's actually you thinking of yourself in this way that is the real cause of your pain. Recall what we said earlier about the case where we don't feel upset when someone leaves us. We haven't taken their actions personally, and so we don't doubt our own worth and value. Because we still feel lovable, we don't feel hurt by them leaving us. Instead, as I said, we may even feel relieved or happy that they're gone. Also, it's important to be conscious of giving our power away in a situation like this. Other people can hurt us only if we believe they're right about us not being good enough. I'll give a pretty elaborate example of this in Chapter 6. As a preview, you should start brushing up on your archery lessons. If we truly loved and accepted ourselves, we might feel surprised, perhaps even shocked and some sadness when we find out that they've been cheating. But we won't feel betrayed. It's always how we see ourselves, rather than what they did, that determines how we feel. It's also really important to keep in mind that we have a part in how every relationship plays out. First, we're responsible for the people we pick. They may be cute and sexy as hell, but that doesn't mean we don't do our own due diligence. Marrying a psycho is on us, not them. You should also listen to everything they tell you. I once had a woman I got involved with tell me on our first date that she had left every relationship she had ever been in. Of course, I convinced myself that this time it would be different, until she left me for someone else 6 months later. Next, it's our job to take care of ourselves in all our relationships. This means that even if we miss their obvious to everyone else sociopathic tendencies, it's up to us to get the heck out of Dodge if their behavior is truly harmful or inappropriate. We can't continue to ignore warning signs and then try to pin all our emotional distress on them. Finally, being loving towards another doesn't mean we stop loving ourselves. We bear responsibility for turning a blind eye to someone else's bad behavior. Being kind doesn't mean letting someone else walk all over us. This actually isn't good for either party. We get more proof that other people are jerks, and they get the message that their inappropriate behavior is somehow okay. Thus, holding others accountable for their harmful behavior is good for us. All right. So, I want to say one more thing on the greed thing before we move on. It just occurred to me. So, I'm not saying it's good to be greedy. I'm not saying it's good to be selfish, obviously. But I'm also not saying it's bad to be those things. Now, why am I saying that? This comes up in Chapter 7 when we talk about forgiveness. The thing I try to do now is begin to say, when there's something about another person that upsets me or that I want to judge or make them wrong for, when I can remember this, and I don't always do this, but when I can remember, it's to stop and say, how am I like that? Because we see in other, Course in Miracles tells us, we see in other people all that we have not forgiven in ourselves. So if I see somebody who's being selfish or somebody who's being greedy, what I try to do now, when I can remember, is to start with that question, how am I like that? What are the times in my life when I'm greedy, when I'm selfish? And what that does is it moves me from judgment to compassion, from condemnation to understanding. Because if I can look at somebody else and see the worst of them and say, wow, sometimes I'm like that, and when I'm like that, it's really because I'm afraid, or because I'm sad, or because I'm angry, or because I'm confused. So what I want to do, and hopefully other people will resonate with this, is to begin to see myself in everybody else, both the positive and the negative. Because the minute I judge somebody, we're going to talk all about judgment in chapter 6. Judgment, there's a whole, judgment, got a lot to say about judgment. The minute I judge somebody, I'm now disconnected, and now I have the right to condemn them for being imperfect or for being whatever they're being in that moment, as opposed to saying, whoa, all right, so this is a reminder, how am I like that? How can I heal that within myself? And I have stories, when we get to chapter 6, I'm going to talk about this, where by healing one of the, a characteristic in myself, it no longer triggers me when I see it in another person. And instead of wanting to condemn them, I can be compassionate and I can try to help them if they want help, instead of attacking them, judging them, making them wrong for being that way. So it's not good to be greedy, it's not good to be selfish, but it's also not bad. And it's an opportunity for me, when I see it in another person, to say, how am I like that? And then to begin to say, why am I like that when I'm like that? And then begin to have compassion and understanding for the other person, and maybe even be helpful, be of service to them to work through whatever issue they're working through. All right. So let's get on to our discussion for tonight. So I've mentioned this in the past, and this is the assignment for tonight, to talk about this. What other people think of me is none of my business. Now, you're talking to somebody, or I'm somebody who, for most of my life, what I thought other people thought of me was like the most important thing. Being worried about what other people thought about me, and then deciding how I feel about myself based on what I think other people think of me. And God, it was crazy making. And God, it was, and that's like codependency 101. And because as a codependent, I don't have a sense of self. I look outside of me to gauge my sense of self. Am I lovable? Am I a good person? Am I attractive? Am I smart? Am I funny? Am I personable? Am I worth being loved? And it was always looking outside of me, reading other people, reading the cues that I get, and running my life that way. And if I thought somebody liked me, then I could feel good about myself because I thought I was likable. And if I thought they didn't like me, then I didn't like myself because they must know better than I do about myself, who I am, who I am as a person. So, what other people think of me is none of my business. Now, it goes beyond that. I mean, my self-image was so negative that for a while there, it was like, what I think of me is none of my business. I had to detach from all of that, to stop judging myself, to stop evaluating myself, and all of that. And so I offer this to you guys. We're going to talk about this after the break. The assignment for tonight was to talk about whether you agree or disagree with that. So when we come back from the break, we'll focus on that. But again, for me, it has really been a process now of me taking back my power. You got to remember, way back in August, we were talking about true power. And actually, we were talking about taking responsibility, and then we were talking about true power and the relationship between responsibility and power. And if I don't take responsibility for how I feel about myself, then I have no power to change how I feel. because it's always going to be dependent on what I think they think of me, or what I think you think of me, or whoever I'm giving my power away to decide whether or not I'm a good person, whether or not I'm lovable, whether or not I'm valuable, whether or not I have something to offer the world, whatever. So now the problem with all of this is when I say what other people think of me is none of my business, now all of a sudden I have to take responsibility for how I feel about myself. Because what I prefer to do, especially in my romantic relationships, was, as I said, gauge whether or not I'm a good, lovable, valuable person based on what I think somebody else thinks of me. And when I think they don't like me, or when I think they think poorly of me, now I get to be mad at them. And I get to say that they're a jerk, or they're this, or they're that, and blame them for how I feel about myself. Because they're not treating me the way I want to be treated, or because they're being mean to me, or because they're not concerned about my welfare, or they're not thinking of me first instead of themselves. It's insanity. And that's basically how I've lived most of my life. Again, deciding how I feel based on what I think somebody else thinks of me, and then being angry at them when they're not being nice to me or making me feel the way I think I want to feel, or they should make me feel. Out of my mind, what can I say? All right, now in the reading tonight, I mentioned celebrity worship. And honestly, before I wrote this book, I never even really thought about this. But as I was writing this chapter, it just kind of came out. And again, this is not to make anybody wrong who likes sports figures or movie stars or whatever. That's not what this is about. There is a way to have a healthy admiration for other people. What I'm talking about, what we don't want to do, is when we look outside of ourselves for a sense of our worth and value. It's kind of what I was just talking about a minute ago. When I'm focused out there, and based on what I think is happening out there is how I come to the conclusion about myself, how I feel about myself, whether or not I'm a good person, whether or not I'm valuable and worthy as a person, I'm giving my power away. So the whole thing with the celebrity worship, and I also mentioned, luxury brands. I'm looking at a hotel or a piece of electronic equipment, phone. It's a new phone, by the way. Camera equipment, the car I drive, whatever. I'm looking to those things to establish my value and worth as a person. So because I own expensive things, or because I dress like my favorite celebrity, or I drive the same car as my favorite movie star, that makes me more valuable as a person. That makes me more worthy. That makes me more lovable. That's what we don't want to do. All right? It's okay to love somebody, an actor. You can love their performances and maybe their philanthropic efforts, the charities they support. That's great. Nothing wrong with any of that. But what we don't want to do is begin to look outside ourselves for our sense of worth and value by kind of leeching off of somebody else's celebrity status, or by buying certain brands or whatever we do, belonging to certain clubs, country clubs, whatever, because we think that's going to make us more valuable and worthy. Now again, the problem is most of the time we're not aware of this stuff. And the subconscious thought, the thought that we buried as a little kid that is running our lives, is that we're not valuable, we're not worthy, we're not good enough. And it manifests all over our life, and we don't even know that that thought is running us. It never occurs to me to say, gee, maybe there's another way for me to feel good about myself than to buy an expensive European sports car that I really can't afford, but so I think people will be impressed by me, and then I can feel valuable and worthy as a person. I sign that lease on that car that I really can't afford without knowing that the reason I'm buying that car is so I will feel more valuable and worthy as a person. So, so what we want to do is, this is an inside job. All right, this goes with the reprogramming we've been talking about, affirmations. This goes with having a vision of ourselves as good, valuable, worthy people, regardless of, and again, it's really easy to esteem myself when I'm doing all the things I think I'm supposed to be doing. It's much more difficult for me to love myself when I least like who I'm being. We've talked about this a couple times, and we're going to focus on that again next week as part of the definition of unconditional love. Unconditional love is being willing to love myself or another person when I least like who we're being. So in those moments when I'm, the worst of me is coming out, when I am selfish or greedy or afraid, or I do something harmful to myself or another person, those are the moments when I establish my value and worth as a person. If I can love myself, if I can comfort myself, if I can console myself, if I can forgive myself, when the worst of me is coming out, then what I'm doing is I'm building that esteem. I'm building that sense of value and worth as a person. Now, in the reading, I think it was in the audiobook, I did mention how important it is to esteem our children. Because when a child has a healthy sense of value, when they have a sense that they're worthwhile people, when they have a sense that they're lovable and that they're good people, then they don't have the negative programming which causes them, as an adult, to spend too much money on a sports car, or to spend too much money on a phone or whatever, just so they can feel valuable and worthy as people. And the people who feel really good about themselves as kids, they're the ones who do great things in the world. They're the ones who share with other people. They're the ones who uplift people. So it starts when we're kids, and it starts with our kids. And, the problem is most of us, at least on this workshop, we're not kids anymore. But it's never too late to reparent ourselves. And that's what I love. I've mentioned in the past a couple of times John Bradshaw and his work. He talks a lot about reparenting. And so to reparent myself is to instill in myself a sense of value and worth, that I am a good person, that I am lovable, that I am worthwhile, that I am worth being loved, even when the worst of me comes out. Simple, but not easy. And yet, there's nothing else to do. There's nothing that's more important, at least in my life, than to begin to repair that sense of unworthiness, to repair that sense of valuelessness, and loving myself unconditionally. And then I can bring that to others, and we all have a different experience. All right, I got another cool slide. I like the paparazzi on that. Now this is kind of carrying on. I think I mentioned this at the end of the audiobook tonight, and that is that I'm responsible for the people that I pick to be in my life. I'm responsible for my entire life, guys. And the sooner and the more I embrace that. Now remember, responsibility is not the same as blame. But I am responsible for the people I surround myself with. And if I bring people into my life who can't support me, if I bring people into my life who are judgmental or critical of me, that's on me, not them. I got to do my homework. I got to do my due diligence. The people that I surround myself with. Now you may say, well, okay, that's fine with friends, but what about our family? It's like, and my answer to that, this will be in my next book. We actually choose our family. And I'm actually going to say that with a straight face. I mean, we choose the entire experience that we're having in this lifetime, we've chosen ahead of time. Not the specifics per se, but the relationships, the general circumstances, and all of that. So you did pick your family. But here's the thing. All right, let's forget that for the moment. Let's say we didn't pick our families. We still get to decide, especially those of us that are now adults, we get to decide who we keep in our life. And if a family member really is a problem, then it's up to us to take the steps that we need to take care of ourselves. Because what I do, or what I've done in the past at least, is I haven't taken care of myself. I haven't had healthy boundaries. I haven't questioned, the basis of my relationship with that person. And then when they're a shithead or whatever they are, then I get to feel like a victim and I get to be right about them being wrong. I get to be right about them being bad. And the ego loves that. That's ego territory, making other people wrong for who they are and blaming them for how I feel and not taking responsibility for the fact that I'm hanging out with this person, or I've invited them into my life, or I allow them into my life, or I go over their house and hang out with them. So we're going to talk about healthy boundaries when we get to chapter 7. But the thought I want to leave you guys with tonight is, I'm responsible for the people that I pick to be in my life. And if I have a lot of shitheads in my life, then it's my job to take care of myself in those situations with those people. It's my job to set boundaries. And it may be my job to leave the relationship. All right, it's almost 9 o'clock. So what we'll do now is we will take our break. Oh, let's just talk about the assignment for tonight, as I mentioned. What other people think of me is none of my business. Do you agree or disagree, and why? So we'll talk more about this when we come back from the break. If you are new here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a song, and then there are going to be lyrics on screen, so you're welcome to sing along. It's a very empowered song by Robbie Williams called Love My Life, and great affirmations in there, so feel free to sing along at home with your microphone muted. And it's a 5-minute break. When we come back, we'll start with our assignment for tonight. So let's look at our assignment again for tonight. What other people think of me is none of my business. Do you agree or disagree, and why? And anything else that's related to that topic. So who wants to kick us off tonight?
I like to share. Hi everyone. Yeah, actually, I don't know. I've been running a grief group for past 4 months. Because I lost so many people. For death, like one after another. I mean, it's been a long journey. Like it's been like that for past 8-9 years, and what other people think of me is none of my business. Is that I hear this from our group that people couldn't really grieve, properly, because there are like very interesting components of codependencies, and like what you mentioned about the self-parenting, a lot of that are all mixed up there together. So many people like be worrying about how other people will feel, or how other people will think of me, that people keep their grief inside without being able to let it out and share, and not being able to talk about death of loved ones. Many people are like that. It was really surprising for me. So I'm learning that, like, when you just play this song, like Love My Life, it's like the song sounds really different, like what the song I heard like several months ago before I start doing this grief work, it was just a song that I would sing for me, but now when I hear the song, it sounds like my dad is singing for me, because I've been grieving my father, doing a lot of work around grief. And it sounds like my father is talking to me, life is not going to be always very, like just fancy and easy and positive. There's going to be, pain. There's going to be challenges, a lot of things lies ahead. But, at the end, we always have to know, like, how to take care of myself, how to repair myself, how to stand up again, no matter what happened. And ultimately for me, like, what other people think of me is none of my business. Is really, really, I think it has to be my foremost important, things to remember. It's like, if I feel sad, it should be okay that I feel sad. If I need the time to grieve, it should be okay, that I need time to grieve, and not be that person who's always like, out there performing, and impressing people, or try to look good. It should be okay that I cocoon myself and just be the way I am, because, from there, like, I'll find my answer, from, within me. I actually want to talk about your workshop in the grief group, because of it, because I think there's a lot of positive messages, related to also grief as well. So anyway, thanks for listening.
Great. Thank you, Helena. My sister is actually a grief counselor in Florida. She has a practice there. She works with people. So I know a little bit about what you're talking about. I love the fact that you're helping other people and helping yourself while you help other people. And again, I want to be really clear. We're not saying, we're not saying we don't relate to other people. It's not saying we don't feel compassionate for other people when they're in pain. It's not to say that we don't share, what's going on with us with appropriate people in appropriate ways. What I'm really focused on, and I think this is consistent with what I heard in your share, for me at least, it's just to remember that, I get to decide who I am. I get to decide how I feel about myself. It's actually my responsibility to do that. And what I've done in the past is I put that responsibility on other people. So if I'm in a relationship with a woman, or if I have a boss that I'm working with, I want the boss to tell me that I'm okay. I want the boss to tell me I'm doing a good job, because I don't think I can't see that in myself. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's looking outside of myself to make a decision about who I think I am, how I feel about myself. So, but it's perfectly okay to have intimate relationships where we share feelings and where we care about other people. And listen, I want people to like me. I want people to like my book. I want people to like my book. I want people to enjoy spending time with me. I want clients to like my work. So I'm not saying we don't become disconnected from our emotional involvement with other people. But the difference today for me is to not go there to decide how I feel in here about me, to not look out there to come to a conclusion about my worth and value as a person because of what I think somebody else thinks of me. So, Helena, great. Thank you for sharing all that. Glad you're here with us tonight. You want to say anything else, or you're good?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I really like that, you know, you really bring up a lot of important like essence, you know, of like how we can overcome. And I can really share that part when you mentioned about the celebrity things that were, you know, in my family, you know, and overseas, that have a celebrity actually in my family. And it was very hard. You know, it's very hard to have someone that is so like grandiose and all that. But I also learned that, you know, by actually like being able to spend time with them face to face, realize that I even myself had a lot of fantasy around the celebrities and, you know, the all this stuff. Just it was a complete false ideal, you know. Yeah. So I absolutely agree with what you just said today, and I'm very grateful that I came here. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Elena. And again, it's okay to look up to people who do great things in the world. It's so great, you know, have an inspiration. You know, people who follow sports. You know, it's great to have a celebrity to look up to in terms of achievement and motivation and all of that. What I'm saying is, don't use a connection with a celebrity to suddenly feel good about ourselves. You know, and it comes up. You know, again, for me, I've bought cars to feel good about myself. I've moved into addresses, zip codes, so I could feel good about myself. You know, it's all out there, finding a way to feel good about what's going on in here. So good. Thank you, Helena. Who else? Who else wants to chime in on our topic for tonight? Judy? You're just smiling away over there. You want to say something?
I missed a lot of this because of something that came up on my screen on my computer that I needed to immediately fill out because it's something I want to do, which was amazing that I should see that. Anyway, you know, one of those coincidences. But what anyone says, I've always used this expression in my program. What anyone has to say about, you know, about somebody behind their back is none of their business. I'd like to tell you that I do that all the time, but I'm not going to tell you that I do because that would be lying. A lot of the times, you know, certainly I don't allow what anybody's saying or doing or acting towards me to change who I am. But there are times of where in the past especially, where I was much more insecure. And it really made a difference what you thought about me. I mean, really made a difference. Not as much today, for sure. It has really lessened, but it's taken a lot of work, you know, to get to that point. And it's a very flippant expression. It's very easy to say it to someone else. But I think to live it and truly experience that all the time takes a lot of work, because you really have to empower yourself, you know, and, you know, I don't know if it's here or recently I've read, there's just so many negative thoughts that we have during a day. You know, they certainly outweigh the positive is what I've read. And that's an example where that could feed into that, I think. And, you know, and I'm just trying to practice more positivity and less fear and taking one foot in front of the next. And, you know, and a lot of times I don't care what anybody is saying about me. It's none of my business because I just, you know, if I don't want to say if I know that I'm a good person, that I'm doing the best that I can, then, you know, screw it if other people don't like it, you know, like I can only do so much. And I have been like really reaching beyond me lately. I mean, truly, I can't even tell you. And I think it's providence. I think it's, you know, the stars are aligned in such a way that I'm doing that. And, but it's scary. It's really scary. Because, you know, a lot of times I don't think I'm good enough, you know? So it all it's like a spider web, it all entwines together, all the topics you bring up, Peter, certainly topics that I think most human beings could really benefit from. And I will make sure at some point to write something on your site, because it's all good, quote unquote, food for thought, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate other people sharing their experiences on this too. So anyway, I wasn't going to say anything, but you wanted to pick on the smiling face. Okay, ready?
Yeah, no, you caught my eye, so I wanted to see what you had to say. So thank you for that. Yeah, and I love it. I think, the thing that was interesting, you said insecurity, and in chapter 6, I talk a lot about insecurity, but it boils down to this. The only reason I feel bad when somebody says something negative about me is because I'm afraid it's true, and that's what's going on in here. So when I straighten this out, then when somebody says something negative, it's like, oh, that's your opinion. I don't agree. I have a healthy sense of myself. Now, it's not to say I never make mistakes. It's not to say I don't do things imperfectly, but I don't have to beat myself up anymore for doing that, for being that way. And when somebody else triggers that in me, I don't have to give my power away to them or to the situation. And I remember, oh, wait a second, and the thing that I do is, or used to do, is I would base what I thought of myself on what I think they think about me. I don't even really bother to find out what they really think about me. I just make up in my head, oh, they don't like me. I'm not attractive enough. I'm not accomplished enough. I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough. But I never actually find out what they really think. It's all in my head. That's the depth of my insanity. So,
I agree.
And you're right. It is easier said than done. You're right, because there's still, we're social creatures. We want to belong to a group. We want to feel loved. We want to feel accepted. We want to feel acceptable.
Serotonin. Yep. Serotonin.
And that's in the DNA. Because again, going back to when we were those little creatures in the trees or wherever we lived, they needed to group together to protect themselves. They needed to have that sense
tribal.
of.
No, it's tribal. And it goes back to, we wouldn't be alive if we didn't have that,
Right.
Need. Can I share this? I don't know. It made me think of a little story of my son when he was in high school. He was a person who would wear, he was always picked upon because he was short. He's really not that short anymore, which is a good thing, but he was picked on. And in high school, he wasn't afraid to wear like a pink shirt. We're talking 20 years ago, you know what I mean? Like, 15, 20 years ago. It's not like today that's not even like a question, right? And he came home one day and he said to me, Mom, this kid came up to me and he said, he started razzing me because I had a pink shirt on. I said, well, what'd you do? He said, I looked at him and said, that's okay. You don't have to wear it. And I thought, that's a great response, to be that secure and say, screw it, like buzz off. So anyway, this whole conversation it's like that, So anyway, maybe that story.
Good.
So.
Great. Thank you, Judy. Anybody else want to chime in on our topic? We have a few more minutes.
Yes, Peter, I would, if you don't mind.
Joanne, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I'm listening and contemplating to everything that's being said. And when you have good opinion of yourself, devoid of what others think of you, I think you have to be open to the positive relationships in your life that are going to give you feedback. They're going to help you grow. So if you, it is just my opinion, of course, if you don't take that feedback or you brush it off or you don't like what's being said, or at least write it down and contemplate it. How do you grow from those positive relationships that are giving you that feedback, so that you can either go down a path of correction, or you can go down just a path of thinking about what they said? So like, I almost disagree with, it says like, do you agree or disagree? I would lean like more towards the disagree, but understanding that you have good, high opinion and values of yourself, so that you're able to listen and absorb that feedback and say, well, okay, they could be right, and let me explore that a little bit more, so that you grow. And I think sometimes if we discount something that's being said to us without a good, solid contemplation, we can miss something in the long term.
Great. I get it. I agree. Totally.
Agree too.
That makes a lot of sense. And, the way you prefaced it was a healthy relationship. So if you have a healthy, positive relationship, feedback, and I've said to people, gee, I feel like I could have handled that better. Do you have any suggestions?
Mm-hmm.
So, so I'm not discounting that at all. I think that's exactly right. And if I don't have a healthy sense of myself, a healthy sense of self-esteem, then it's going to be very difficult for me to hear feedback as feedback. Instead, what I would do is I would hear it as criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would feel justified in attacking them back or criticizing them back or whatever. So I totally agree. And it's helpful for me if I have a healthy sense of self, so I can actually hear the feedback and let it in. In chapter, I want to hear what else you have to say, Joanne. Just let me say one other thing. In chapter 7, again, I'm going to talk about boundaries. And one of the characteristics of boundaries is that they're permeable. See, a lot of people think of boundaries as walls, which is we don't let anything in. We just have a wall up. But that's not true. Boundaries are permeable, meaning we let information in. We let stuff in, and then we evaluate it, and we get to say, gee, maybe that's good. I got to look at that, or that makes sense. Or we can say, no, that's not really about me. I think that's about them. They're projecting, or somewhere in between. So I totally agree. And having healthy boundaries is part of having healthy relationships. And healthy boundaries are permeable. We let information in, we consider it, but we don't have to, as I said, if I go in, in a real deficit in terms of my security as a person or whatever, it's going to be very hard for me to hear feedback. And I see this a lot. I see this with politicians. I see this with, people all over the place. They can't hear any criticism. They can't hear feedback because it becomes criticism and they get defensive. And then they feel like they have to fight. They can't admit that they may have made a mistake or whatever. And that hurts everybody. All right, good. Thank you for clarifying that, Joanne. I appreciate it. Thanks for the feedback. Who else wants
Hi,
to chime in?
can I be heard?
Yeah.
Hey, okay, Dee Dee in Washington. Hi. I did not have the privilege of spending a lot of years in a family that was really skilled at communicating feedback or thoughts. And, so I'm now, however many years later, kind of learning how to be with, choosing my family and understanding when people are putting their stuff on me, because I do hear it as criticism. If they're coming at me with blame, shame, guilt, and their own fear, my ability to hear what they're really saying through that is limited when I'm stressed, when I have my own, issues going on. And so this healing, this workshop, your book, the trainings can't come fast enough for me, because my preference is to be grounded in my relationship with myself enough to be able to hear through, I'd like to be able to hear through the blame, shame, guilt, and fear, particularly with people who I feel, lifetime investments with. And if I'm in my own fear, it doesn't work yet. So I look forward to being, in love most of the time, in my love most of the time, so that other people can be, the way they need to be. And I don't have to tell them, well, you have to say it this way, or I can't hear you because you're not owning your part, stuff like that. Okay. Merry, and happy almost New Year, you guys.
All right, great. Thank you, Dee Dee. So that's another good point. And again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier. We don't have to take everything in. A healthy boundary says we let information in that may be helpful or useful. But if somebody, I'll just speak for myself, if somebody really is being inappropriate, if somebody is shaming me, attacking me, blaming me, I don't have to let that in. And I don't have to make excuses for somebody else's bad behavior. And there are people, I've been this person in my own life, in my relationships, where I was being inappropriate with somebody by blaming them or shaming them or trying to guilt them into something. We're going to talk a little bit about guilt. And if you want a crash course on guilt, read A Course in Miracles. But we use guilt to manipulate each other. We use guilt to make people feel bad. That's not healthy feedback. I think, I don't want to speak for Joanne, but I'll speak for myself. I think it's healthy, positive feedback. It's certainly good to be open to that. And it's also good to know when, what I'm hearing, you're speaking in a way right now, you may have good information for me, but the way you're presenting that information is not appropriate. And if you want to speak, well, we could pick up the conversation later when we've both had a chance to calm down a little bit. There are ways to invite somebody to give us feedback when they're being inappropriate. And sometimes I just got to leave the room. And sometimes I just got to leave the relationship. Because my first job is always to take care of myself. And I do that by having healthy boundaries. So, if it's a close personal relationship and we have a long history, then there's room to negotiate, there's room to express what's working for us, what's not working for us, if we have an intention to continue in that relationship. But I have to say, for me at least, if somebody really is being inappropriate, if they're attacking me or blaming me or shaming me, I have the right to remove myself from that situation. I don't have to let that in necessarily. So, Dee, do you want to say anything else about that? Or Joanne? Anybody?
Yes, Peter. I agree. That is like where it comes in, that we're like all responsible for the behavior that we'll accept from other people. And I think even like in the workplace, people could be their own selves, and they may not like a decision you put in front of them or ask them to do, or whatever the case may be. And if they give you feedback or act in a certain way, you're right, you don't have to accept that behavior, and you can remediate it, or you can just leave.
Right. Yeah. And that's just taking care of ourselves. It's my job to take care of myself in all my relationships, in all situations, and with all people. And I'm learning how to do that now. Nobody taught me how to do that. So I'm learning, and it's taken me 30 years to get to the point where I can, if somebody actually is being inappropriate, I don't have to sit there and just take it. I can set some kind of a boundary. I can stop them if it's really being inappropriate and all that. So, but this is for a lot of us, we didn't have that modeled for us. The foundation for all of this is, again, chapter 1, who do you think you are? How do you see yourself? Who do I think I am? How do I see myself? Because when I begin to see myself as somebody who can take care of myself, who can stand up for myself, who can set healthy boundaries, then I'm less defensive, I'm less insecure. And human relationships are messy. Again, I'm not married, but I bet anybody who's married or has been married, they'll tell you relationships are messy. So it's not always black and white, and you know, we can be inappropriate and then apologize and make an amends. And somebody may be inappropriate with us, and then we may give them another chance. You know, maybe they make an apology, maybe they take responsibility for their part, they make an amends. I mean, it's kind of fluid. It's not always black and white. So I'm not saying we cut off people if they're being inappropriate. I'm not saying that we just leave, you know, when things get too crazy. Although sometimes that might be appropriate, you know. I think for me, more and more now, I'm just aware of the impact the situation is having on me in the moment, and then evaluating whether or not it's appropriate, whether or not it's safe, whether or not it's healthy for me to continue in that situation. And I don't always guess it. I don't always figure that out in the moment. Sometimes it's a day later, which is like, oh, gee, you know, I really should have hung up the phone on that person, or I really should have gotten up and walked out of the room, you know, or I shouldn't have got up and walked out of the room. I should have actually given them a chance to explain, you know. So it's a little messy, and we're learning, you know. I said last week we're learning to walk again. Or for the first time, and we're learning to walk through life in a healthy, positive way, and it's going to take a little work. Barbara, you want to say something about all that?
Yeah, you know, I was waiting. I was going to say hi. Yeah, I wrote something down earlier. You know, it seems like it was, you know, what people thought of me, or what people think of other people. I don't remember that coming up throughout the years. It is now. And I think you probably talked about it, is that when you're evolving into being bigger than being bigger than you think you are, I guess that comes to fruition. You got to think about that. And so it's something new for me. It's hard. I mean, you've got to let the past go and forget about, oh, I remember when this person did this and that. So I wrote down, and it's happening. I sit at my desk at my computer, which you have heard about. And, I wrote down the thing about fear again, the false evidence of appearing real. And so when somebody basically has an opinion about me, that's not necessarily true, yes, I have to say to myself, it's not factual, it's not true. And, you can put yourself into a state of being, actually today, the other day, I think it was, a state of being like at least peaceful, feeling good about yourself. I mean, how many times do we say all those things? It's very cliche, but it's peaceful. I'm doing the best job I can. I can say now I like myself. In those situations, at that moment, I can say all those things. It's the only thing I can say. I won't go to the other one anymore. I'm not going to go to that negative, awful place that I used to be at. And, I may be calm for a moment, but, this whole change, I'll tell you right now, gives me tremendous anxiety. It's not easy. But the anxiety, I guess, is good. It's better than being depressed. So I went through depressed, anxiety, and then I'll get to a really good place. But yeah, I think once you become really aware, then you're really aware of what people think of you. And then you really have to work on the fact that it's none of my business. It's not something I'm going to go there. I'm not going to go there. But you have to, but you're still there. You're present in the situation. So you got to think of things like I just said, not factual. I guess I think more of myself. I hold my head up high. I will shake my head yes. And that's all I can do. Did I say enough?
That's great.
That's great. Yeah. I've had somebody talk to me about it a few times.
Good. You get good advice.
Right? Right. You've talked to me about it. You've given me good advice.
Yeah, but again, I give good advice, but you took it. So you're doing it, not
Yes.
me. The thing I was going to say, so there's two things that came up, and one just went out of my head, and I know we're running a little bit late. The first thing is just recognizing that when I make other people responsible for my well-being, my emotional well-being, when I make other people responsible for how I feel about myself, it puts a lot of pressure on them. Because now all of a sudden, oh my God, I can't really tell Peter how I feel because it's going to hurt his feelings and he's going to be upset or whatever. It's like I'm putting the responsibility on them to take care of me, and that's not really fair, and it's not their responsibility to make me feel good about myself, to make me feel lovable or valuable or worthy or whatever. And then the second thing I was going to say, and this goes across the whole conversation, going back to chapters 1 and 2, we said, actually chapter 3, we said the four things that we have power over are our thoughts, our feelings, our words, and our actions, which by definition means that we're powerless over anything that's not our thoughts, feelings, words, or actions, which means I'm powerless over what somebody else thinks about me. I'm powerless over whether they like me or they don't like me. I'm powerless over whether they hate me or they don't hate me. I don't have any power. I can't choose their thoughts for them. I can't choose their feelings about me for them. And I'm also not responsible for how they feel about me. I'm also not responsible for how they feel in general. I am accountable to them for my behavior if it impacts them in a negative way, but I'm never responsible for how somebody else feels about me or about anything else. Their feelings are about them, my feelings are about me. Now again, I take responsibility for my behavior, my words and my actions, especially if those have a negative impact on somebody else. And we're going to talk about this in chapter 6, I think, the difference between hurt and harm. I'm not going to get into it tonight, it's going to be too much. But the idea, very simply, is that hurt is subjective. So if somebody feels hurt, it's their subjective interpretation of the situation versus me harming somebody. If I do something that harms somebody, and very quickly I define harm as the unjust diminishment of someone's life experience. So if I unjustly diminish another person's life experience, I've harmed them, and then I'm accountable. I take responsibility for whatever I did that caused them the harm, versus somebody who feels hurt because I didn't show up for their kid's dance recital, or their feelings are hurt because I didn't send them a birthday card or whatever. The difference between hurt and harm. We're going to talk about all that in chapter 6. But again, that just relates to the fact that I'm not responsible for somebody else's feelings, but somebody else is also not responsible for my feelings. My feelings are about me, their feelings are about them. All right.
I have a question about the Course in Miracles because I've seen that book. It's a bazillion pages, etc. Is there a Cliff Notes, a place to get the Cliff Notes, Peter? Thank you.
Well, it's only 1,200 pages. And I've read it cover to cover 4 or 5 times. And I've listened to it. I have the audiobook, so I listen to it. So, when I'm making dinner or when I'm exercising or whatever I'm doing, I just put the course on instead of listening to the radio or television or whatever. As far as Cliff Notes go, I don't think so. But so here's a recommended reading for anybody who's interested in getting into A Course in Miracles. Actually, you know what? I'll bring this next week as a recommended reading, but if you want to get a head start on it, there's a guy named Gary Renard, R-E-N-A-R-D. His first name is Gary. He's written 4 books on A Course in Miracles, and his first book is called The Disappearance of the Universe. The Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Renard. That's only 300 pages, and it's a much easier read than the Course itself, but it is a really good introduction to a lot of the principles of A Course in Miracles. So other than that, I mean, the course is dense too. It's not just 1,200 pages, but it's a dense 1,200 pages. It's not for the faint of heart. But Gary's books are really good. I hope I remember, but I'll spotlight Gary's books next week. But that'll get you started, Dee Dee.
I don't know what the Course of Miracle is. What is it exactly, Peter?
Well, Course in Miracles is a book. It was written in the 1960s. It's a spiritual treatise. It talks all about, it talks a lot about the ego, which you'll hear me talking more and more about. But it also talks about spirit. It talks about our true nature. One of the basic premises of A Course in Miracles is forgiveness. But it talks about, again, we started off the meeting tonight, the workshop tonight, talking about the power of the mind. Course in Miracles talks all about the power of the mind to create our reality. Again, it's 1,200 pages. Now, it's 600 pages of what they call the text. And then there's another 350 pages or so that's the workbook. And the workbook is a lesson. It's one lesson. There's 365 lessons, so it's one lesson for each day of the year. And the lessons are just a couple of pages long. Although they're practical. They give you specific exercises to do that day. But here's the thing about the course. So the woman who wrote the course, she's actually passed away. And there are different groups now that are kind of taking, I want to be really careful how I say this. So there's more than one group that's teaching A Course in Miracles. So I'm not sure, I'm happy to look at whatever you're getting.
The one called, it's the Course in Miracle Global Study Group with Robin Duncan and Terry Mashi. I can forward it to you.
Yeah, forward it to me.
Yeah.
I don't know them in particular. There are 3 or 4 big groups that teach the course. I actually don't do any of the big groups. I have a study group that I do on Tuesday nights online with a guy who's actually in Rhode Island, and I know his sister who lives here in Jersey, and he has about 8 or 10 people, and we have a meeting every Tuesday night, and we go through the course together. It's actually a self-study course. It's set up that you don't even need a group. You can do it on your own, but it is so dense in places that it's helpful to have other people who are familiar with it. And there are Course in Miracles conferences, there are groups online, there are study groups online, local study groups, and all that.
Yeah, I'm happy to share this. I mean, as a Christmas gift, I send it to you, Peter. This is, I think, you just watch by yourself. I get the videos or something, and it looks like it's got 17 chapters.
The course itself is 31 chapters, but
oh, is it? Okay, and then I think it started from this one is from the Newport Beach, California.
Right.
This group, I'll forward it to you anyway.
Yeah. So there are different groups that do it. If you're really interested, at a certain point, it pays just to get a copy of it. And you can get a PDF version or ebook version if you want. You can actually get the book itself. As I said, I have all of that, but I mostly listen to the audiobook. And you can get the workbook separately. And then there's a third book that's about 50 pages. It's called The Manual for Teachers. And there's actually 2 pamphlets as well. I've been studying the course for almost 20 years now, maybe 15. And it's still, it's so different than everything else. I don't know how else to say it. It's the purpose of the course is stated purpose is to basically, reverse everything that we think is true is really not true. And it's to reverse our thinking, our perceptions. But the main avenue is forgiveness. And that's been the biggest thing in my life. That's why the last 60 pages of this book, about 20% of the book is on forgiveness. I take what I learned from the course and then I bring it down to earth where I think it's more, because it's really hard to understand in the course. So I bring it down to earth for people in my own way. it's not a reason. Everything I just said is not a reason not to check it out. And it may come easy for you. So I don't know. It's just, it's so different in so many ways that it is challenging for a lot of people. Judy, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Dee Dee that, I'd heard about the Course in Miracles, and I don't think it was just from you, Peter. It was just like all of a sudden I heard about it a lot. All right. And I bought a book. I haven't read it, but I got it online. A Course in Miracles Made Easy, Mastering the Journey from Fear to Love by Alan Cohen. And I chose him because I read a spiritual book by him every day. It's non-denominational. I love it. I just love, I got turned on to it actually through my son, whose spiritual mentor gave him a copy of this book. And it's just very powerful. Every day I read it and I meditate after that, so it's
Course
just
in Miracles Made Easy by Alan Cohen.
right. But Alan Cohen, I read, why I got turned on by him was a deep breath of life by him. And that's what I read every day. And I hadn't heard of that before at all from any of my programs or whatever. But anyway, I'm finding it like every day it speaks to me. It's just amazing. So.
Great. Good. That's another thing, guys. Have a daily practice. I have stuff, I get emails every day, but I also, it's really, the practical work is the day to day. And it's, in the days when I don't feel like meditating, I can forgive myself if I don't, but it always helps when I take that action. So whether it's reading positive literature, saying affirmations, have some daily practice where, I don't want to say it's a regiment, but it's something that you do on a routine basis, and you don't have to think about it. All right, we're way over time, guys. So anybody else want to say anything before we wrap it up for tonight? Have a great holiday if you celebrate. We'll be here next, a week from tonight, we'll be here. And we're going to wrap up. So we're going to finish From Fear to Love next week, and then we're going to embark on the second half of the book. The first 3 chapters, maybe the first 4 chapters kind of stand together, and then the last 3 chapters stand together too, as you'll see. So thank you guys for taking this journey with me. I love that you guys show up every week. It means a lot to me. Tell your friends, and we'll see you next week. Anybody else want to say anything?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good night,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody. Have a good week. Thanks, Peter.
Have a great
Thank you.
holiday.
Great holiday.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy holiday. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Have a great holiday.